Hey Internet, it's RJ. Welcome back. Thanks for tuning into the show today. On today's episode, in this game of bank account bonus hunting, it's all fun and games when everything's paying out. But what happens when the bank doesn't pay? Then what are your options? What are the process steps you need to take to make sure you get your money every single time? So of course, this has happened to you. I hope it hasn't, but if it has, go ahead, press the subscribe button, and let's get to work. Now, first things first, we're going to start out walking through basically two examples. We're going to start out, what you can do before, and then we'll use some examples that I've gone through personally to get you the steps you need to take to get your money. So, first of all, the first thing is preparation that we can have to make this easier on ourselves. So, number one is documentation. Documentation is going to be a theme throughout this episode. So, documentation can be very simple, and for me, I like to print the offer page to PDF, right? Because if you can go in, I think in your printer settings, you can check a box and I'll actually put a date and timestamp on the offer of when you PDF'd it. And you can save it and go back and reference it in case you need it. Number two is using the bank account bonus tracker down below. It's in a Google Drive. You can download it. It's totally free. You can edit it to your heart's content. But that's going to help us keep track with the steps that we're taking, the requirements, and tracking the important dates. Now, there's something to keep in mind here that banks and basically every company has something called a system of record, which basically means if an auditor were to show up and ask to do an audit for records, it would have to be in that system of record. And that really means that, the bank's not going to care about our spreadsheet, but it really does make it easier for us to keep track of, when we're going through this. Now, additionally, some offers show the promo code being attached. I've been known to grab a screenshot of that just in case, but really that's the extent that I go. Now, I have seen some people actually go as far as screen recording themselves signing up. I don't know. It's an option if you want to. I don't go that far, but, it is an option. But for the most part, documentation is key because if you don't have documentation, then you really don't have anything because, again, we're never going to be able to see their system of record. So this is really the only thing we can do. Now, the other thing here is to kind of understand how these terms work. And I understand it, it's not fair, right? We can just get that out of the way because it's the golden rule. The one with the gold makes the rule, and we want their gold, right? And by that, I mean, we would think as soon as I've satisfied the requirements, the bank should pay me. So if it's a direct deposit and 10 debit card swipes, if I do those, I should be paid immediately. But that's often not the case. Now, a lot of banks, they leave it for what they call the requirement period. So if they say you have 90 days to complete these requirements, then most of them aren't going to pay you until those 90 days are up, which really means more like 120 days because as you'll start to notice, banks tend to run statements, right? So at the next billing cycle, next statement cycle, they'll probably run a script in the background, then they'll start paying everyone out, or they'll have specific days that they will start paying people out. You'll notice trends through data points. It's annoying because, it's annoying because if the roles were reversed, they wouldn't give us such latitude, right, in that, right? So it's not fair, but it also leads us to my first point, which is if they haven't paid yet, unfortunately, the first step is to hurry up and wait. Now, how long should you wait? It's technically up to you, but again, I think 120 days from account opening is probably the barometer of where you want to be. Again, it's 90 days for the requirements period, or it could be 60, but you get the point, right? It's usually 60 or 90 days. An extra statement cycle, and then after that, I think you're free to, phone in and get this process started. Now, the other thing here is, did you spoof the requirements or did you do them legitimately? Now, there's nothing wrong with contacting the bank if you've done everything legitimately. There's a legit direct deposit by the book, legit debit card swipe, that whole thing. But if you were spoofing it, like, trying to send an ACH from a business checking account to appear as a direct deposit, well, then, you can still reach out, but again, you're kind of at a disadvantage because, you already know you're in the wrong, and it's entirely possible you didn't get paid because you spoofed it. Now, when that happens, I think it's best to go through data points, from various sites. The good doctor of credit, come here and ask people in our growing community what their experience was, so you can kind of gauge, am I way off in left field breaking the rules, or, are they paying other people who spoofed it as well? So I would check that as well. So with that, with our homework aside, basically, what happens when they don't pay? Well, again, I like to go through system message. I find phone calls are much easier, but unfortunately, again, from our documentation standpoint, I can't, yes, they record the phone calls, but I can't get a log of that phone call, but I can get a log of a system message or an email. That's why I go in writing. Now, very simply put, this is where I start writing out an email, and I'm not trying to tell anyone like you guys don't know how to write emails, but the thing you have to remember is that if you take more time up front to explain everything in your documentation, then it's going to make this process a little bit easier because, I've worked in banks, in marketing departments, and I can tell you for a fact, they often forget to tell either sales staff or customer service staff or what have you that X promotion is running right now. The amount of times that customers will call in and be like, hey, I got this promotion. People would have no idea what they were talking about, but it was still a valid promotion would astound you, or maybe it wouldn't if you're playing this game for a long time. So I say all that to say, really what we want to do is write a standard email. I'm like, hey, good morning. I'm writing in about, this promotion. And then I would, if it's a system message, I would attach my PDF and say, hey, look, I'm attaching it just for reference. Then I go into like, hey, look, I believe I've completed the requirement. So I'd say account opened, actual date open, direct deposit 1 made this date, 2 made this date, debit card made these dates. It's been 120 days. I'm really trying to confirm on your end. Can you confirm that I've completed these requirements? If so, when can I expect the promotion to pay out? And if not, what else is needed from me? Now, we do this for a few different reasons. Number one, it's too easy for them to say, we'll pay out 90 days or whatever, go away, right? Because they probably do get this question, a lot of people wondering, where's my money? I did this thing immediately, right? So we've kind of put that aside. They can actually see, there's some thought in here. I've actually helped them look into my account because they're not going to take my word for it on my dates, but I've showed them the dates to look for, right? I've shown them the promotional offers. So now they have a lot more to go off of and start their research. Number two, we also haven't taken a hard line in the stance because, sometimes we have messed up, right? So I'll give you 2 examples. Omni Credit Union, they're a very small credit union, so I didn't make a video about them, but I emailed them a system message with this exact same phrasing structure, and they said, yep, you're right, here's your $200, no big deal. Easy enough, right? Now, SECU, I did make a video about. I sent them this same deal, and it turns out from their point of view, I had read the terms and conditions as they needed 1 direct deposit, when in actuality, they're like, no, you need 2. Now, we can debate the terms all day, but if we see all the way back to step 1, golden rule, debating it doesn't really matter. They're kind of like, hey, you need 2. So we didn't take a hard line in the stance, tell them they were wrong. We just said, can you look into it? Can you verify? They verified. Now it's it sucks, and obviously I disagree. But again, we got a resolution of what's missing on their end to trigger the bonus, right? And the best part is it's in writing. So if it doesn't pay out again, well, I can go back and see, well, hey, email communication, on this date, and we can keep it moving like that if we need to. And really, that's mostly it. More often than not, that does resolve the problem. There are a few times, however, where this does not resolve the problem, and you have to do a little bit of back and forth. Sometimes you have to go and debate the terms and conditions a little bit. For example, Chartway is another one we did a video about, where I did say again, same structure, and Chartway came back with like, well, there's a lot of financial sites out there, pushing offers that we no longer honor, so where did you get this offer from? I'm like, okay, we're going to play that game. And I know what they're talking about. They're talking about the Dr. Credit post. We made a video about it, right? So I get it. So I'm like, hey, well, I try to keep it vague. You don't need to volunteer too much information. I'm like, hey, look, I applied in July and emailing you in November. I don't remember where the offer came from. But I go back in my emails and I found an email, luckily, that said, hey, complete these steps and you'll get your $100. Because again, if you worked in corporate America, then you know the lesson, never delete any email. I actually have a specific email address just for bank account bonuses. I never delete any email because you might need it. Again, another level of documentation. And again, that was enough to get them to say, well, okay, we'll go look into it further. Hasn't been resolved yet, but I assume that should be enough. And again, it takes not a little bit, I was almost like, I guess I'm trying to say stand up for yourself a little bit. So my response to them was basically, well, I don't remember where I got it from, but it's my understanding, from working in tech. I didn't say all this, but I'm like, hey, how would I have gotten this auto-generated email about the promotional requirements if I wasn't enrolled in the offer? Because they were saying I don't see it on your account. And, that's usually enough. People are like, okay, yeah, let me go look, right? That's all we're trying to get to. Now, sometimes you can, if you don't get anywhere, you can phone in and try to escalate and things like that and break down the terms and conditions. But the majority of the time, this works. I have had a few times where it doesn't work. Acorns was another one where Acorns literally stopped talking to me. They stopped responding to emails. They stopped answering the phone. And then at that point, you have a choice. Do you want to go to the CFPB, which is Consumer Financial Protection Bureau? And basically, they're around to make sure that financial institutions treat customers fairly. So you can absolutely file a complaint, and the bank has to address that complaint. The review will be public, their response to it. And so I have never done this. Like the Acorns one was only like $75. It's whatever. It's $75, not the biggest deal in the world. But you can do that, and I would only really do that route if you have all the documentation that we talked about up front, the emails, the offer, the date you completed it, because then it's much more likely to go in your favor. Because again, system of record. If you don't have anything in their system of record to point to, well, then they're probably not going to do anything about it, unfortunately, and be able to get out of that offer pretty easily. Last thing I'll say here is that there are some trickery things that we've seen before. So, I've dealt with some banks where you sign up and they're like, okay, well, we'll investigate, but we need the information of the person that you signed up from, like a referral link, which, a lot of us are finding these referral links all over the internet. So I'm like, I don't have their information. And they're like, well, okay, well, that's the process. If you don't know that person, I can't help you. Unfortunately, there's not really a ton you can do there because, again, if it's in their process and written down, then it becomes defensible. I don't really think it's fair, but I've run into that as well. Now, another one we've seen here, which is really, really rare, but we've seen the bank definitely job consumers, right? So if you remember Teachers Credit Union, what Teachers did was everyone signed up because it was a really good offer. We figured out you could do $5,000 of credit card funding and you got your referral link instantly. And so they let everyone in and they started shutting down accounts. And part of the offer requirements were that you had to sign up for e-statements, which I remember doing. But then I also remember getting a statement for them with a zero balance while my account was suspended by them with like a week. And you never get a statement your first week of opening an account. So as a result, they were doing that to try to get out of paying, right? To kind of protect themselves a little bit more. But again, those are rarities. But overall, these are the steps that I would personally follow when the bank doesn't pay. Again, it sounds silly because they're so basic, but the basics usually get stuff done. Document, follow up, be polite, but hold your ground. And there you go. So anyways, guys, those have been my stories from The Bank Doesn't Pay. So if you like this one, drop me a thumbs up down below. If you found it particularly interesting, of course, consider subscribing to the channel. Again, posting content just like this every week on how to make the bank's money your money or make them pay, apparently. Question for you guys is let me know what tactics you use or your good stories where you've been triumphant and gotten your money, or even the not-so-good ones, right? Love to read them all. But anyways, guys, that's going to do it for this one. As always, thank you so much for watching. I'll talk to you very soon in the next one.